Hey guys. In my Armored Core 6 video, I talked about how there was a bit of a controversy with the game brought upon by largely by VideoGameDunkey's review of the game, where people were saying, kind of having a conversation if the game was too easy or too hard. And the reason for that is in VideoGameDunkey's video, he says the game is way too easy because he happened upon a dual Gatling build that just trivialized the game and made it very easy. And this has kind of sparked a interesting discussion about difficulty in video games. How do we judge difficulty in video games? And especially in a game like Armored Core, where your build matters so much, how do you go ahead and judge a game based upon that? And I find this very interesting as somebody that reviews games and oftentimes kind of shies away from talking about the difficulty of a game because it is such a subjective experience. My experience playing an FPS game, right, or any game that heavily relies upon your aiming is going to be very different from my experience playing a platformer because I have thousands upon thousands of hours in FPS games and aim training and stuff like that versus I haven't played, I've probably played 6 platformers in my life, you know, and like most of those are probably from like the SNES, like playing the Lion King game and Super Mario World and shit, as a kid. So like my experience in these two genres is going to be wildly different. And it's why I don't usually talk about difficulty in reviews, because it is such a subjective thing. But I do think it's an interesting dialogue to start because, you know, I personally think, and I'm a big Video Game Donkey fan. Let me preface this. I've watched all of his video, every single one of his videos the same day he's uploaded them, probably for Jesus Christ, like 6+ years minimum. Like I have followed the guy since he was making League of Legends content, and I was watching every single one of his League videos back in the day. So I've followed the guy for a very long time. I'm a very big fan of his content, but I think that what he showed and how he represented Armored Core 6 is just disingenuous. Is it disingenuous or is it disingenuine? Whichever one. It was not genuine. I think it was just not really a fair light to paint the game in. And let me tell you why. So, in a game like Armored Core 6, for those of you that haven't played it, it's a heavily customizable experience. The whole point of the game is that you have a mech and you customize that mech to tailor suit various missions or various play styles, right? So you can go a super lightweight build, fucking be zooming around, but not a lot of health, or you can go all the way to being a giant tank strapped with weaponry, super slow but sturdy and putting out a lot of damage, right? And everything in between. That's kind of the beauty of the Armored Core series. And in Dunkey's video, he came across a build that is just broken. I mean, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. It is objectively just far, far overtuned from everything else in the game. Like, it's crazy. It feels like you're playing a different video game. And I know this because I was struggling on a mission using my reverse joint, like super lightweight mech, right? I was trying to play the game as the super lightweight mech. Don't worry, I'm not going to use a bunch of Armored Core jargon for you guys that haven't played Armored Core. I'm just talking about Armored Core first because that's where it started, and then I'm going to spiral out to talking about other video games as a whole, right? And difficulty in them and how to evaluate it. But to talk about Armored Core real quick, I know the build he used is overpowered and severely overtuned because I was going through all 3 of my heals and dying on the boss of a mission. There was no checkpoints in this mission, so you have to restart the entire mission. And I kept getting the boss low, but I kept dying ultimately and going through my 3 heals that are allotted throughout the mission. So I went, what if I just try this build? What if I just try it out? I tried it, and I didn't use a single one of my heals, and I lost maybe 30% of my health the entire mission. I didn't have to heal a single time, and I just dookied upon everything, including the boss, and it genuinely felt like I was playing another video game. Like, it was such a night and day experience. It was like what they call a come to Jesus moment. I found Mecha Jesus in this build, and it was insane. There's nothing like it. And anybody that has played the game and used that build and then used a normal build will be able to tell you straight up, yeah, that shit is broken. It's overpowered, it's overtuned, and it's probably going to be nerfed. So I think that Dunkey knew this. I mean, to be honest, I think it's impossible to not know this. If you play the game at all, for any length of time, and you use a normal build, and then you use the build that he used in the video, you'll see it just trivializes everything, and it feels unintended. It feels like you are cheating. And so his argument is that the game is easy because, he used this overpowered build. And I'll be honest, as big of a Dunkey fan as I am, I think that's a huge L take, and it's just fucking dumb. And let me tell you why by using examples from other games. Nobody is going to tell you that Dark Souls or Elden Ring is an easy game, even though we all know, yes, you can go into Magic and you can 1 to 2 shot almost all the bosses. Yes, you can go into Elden Ring, you can fully go into Intelligence, right? And Sorcery. You can get the Flask that gives you infinite mana, and you can practically one-shot every single boss in the game, at most 2-shot them, by using the giant laser beam. But are we going to judge Elden Ring's difficulty upon one outlier build that significantly overperforms when compared to every single other build in the game? No, because that would be idiotic, right? I mean, that's like saying the average human experience is from a billionaire or a millionaire instead of looking at the average dude making 30, 40K a year, right? We would never do that because it's fucking dumb. But that's what it is. And honestly, playing Armored Core 6 using my build and then using that build is literally like I'm living on food stamps and living in income restricted housing, which I know I grew up doing that, and then living in a fucking mansion and never worrying about a bill in your life and making millions, which I don't know what that's like, but I can imagine, and I can imagine it's a lot like going from my lightweight mech in Armored Core to a tank Gatling gun Songbird build in Armored Core. It's insane. It's a completely different experience. And I don't think the average person is using that crazy horse shit in Armored Core. I mean, of course, I'm speaking out of my ass here because the only person that really knows that is FromSoft. I'm sure they have the data and the breakdown of what everybody is using. But I would like to believe that the average person is not using that build. The average dude doesn't go online at all. So maybe he'll stumble across it and be like, wow, this is crazy good. But he's probably not going to. He's probably going to be like me and running through the game, with a suboptimal build. So I think it's just, like I said, disingenuous, whatever word it is, to present the game or any game as being easy when you are using something that is overpowered, unless you're doing it for comedic purposes. I have a video on the channel, if you go way back, called like Dark Souls is an easy game, where I go through and it's like my 10th time playing the game, but I present it in a way where I'm just first trying every single boss and just owning them, and I'm using an overpowered build, and I've played the game like 10 times. But the whole point of that video is to be comedic, right? I'm not actually making a review and saying Dark Souls is an easy game and then using footage of, my 10th time through the game or whatever. But the problem is Dunkey is not being comedic here. He's actually being genuine. And I think that that's sort of the problem with it, is that he's being genuine and he's just saying dumb shit. Like it's just not true that we should evaluate the game based upon this outlier build that is so insanely good, it trivializes the game. You wouldn't do it in Elden Ring. You wouldn't do it in any of the Dark Souls games. And this comes to an interesting, grander discussion, in my opinion, especially as somebody that reviews games, which is, how do you evaluate the difficulty of a video game? Can you? Because, like I said, I mean, it's such a subjective experience. And really, when this came to my full attention, was actually just this year. God damn it! 1 second, my fucking alarm is going off. I'm back. I start working 10 minutes, so let's wrap this up. But so when this first came to my attention was actually this year, which I know it's crazy. I went this many years without realizing this, but my friend Jordan, he's a little bit older than me. I think he's like 28 or 29. I'm 26, about to turn 27. And I've been playing games since I was a baby. You know, since I was a little baby. I have pictures of me as like fresh out of the hospital baby in my dad's lap holding an SNES controller while he's practicing fatalities on me in Mortal Kombat, right? So I've been playing games my entire life. I don't even want to think how many hours I have in games. I mean, bare minimum, I have at least 1 year of my life gone to gaming. Minimum. I mean, just off the top of my head, I can think of games where my playtime is like several thousand hours put together, right? Like, just if you add up like Counter-Strike games, I'm probably at like 3,000 hours, 4,000 hours. You add League of Legends, that's another like 2,000 hours, you know? So I have tens of thousands of hours in gaming. And I don't really know what it's like to be a normal human, you know, to not be the biggest dweeb on the planet. I don't really know what that's like because I've been the biggest dweeb on the planet forever now. You know, just a gamer gremlin, like hunched over. Like, I will never have normal posture. I will never see the world in like a normal human lens. I'll always like be seeing people as NPCs and shit because I've been a gamer my entire life. And my friend Jordan, he just got into gaming like in the last couple years, and he hasn't gamed his whole life. And it's such a fascinating lens for me to see gaming through when I talk to him and I ask him about stuff. Because I'll talk about, you know, like fucking Halo. He'll be like, what's that? Talk about Last of Us. What's that? Uncharted. What's that? Like, he doesn't know any of this shit, right? He knows like Call of Duty. And, you know, he's gotten better over time. But, I mean, it's so interesting to see. And the reason why I bring this up is because it's a perfect example of how difficulty is subjective. Because I played through Resident Evil 4 this year, the remake, and I died probably like 3 to 8 times on the hardest difficulty. I played through the hardest difficulty on my first playthrough. This isn't a humble brag or anything like that. I have, like I said, lost my life to video games. I've played the original Resident Evil 4 dozens of times through. So like, this is to be expected from me, right? And then if we take a look at Jordan, he was struggling and got stuck on many parts of the game playing on normal. And then he actually ended up dropping the game because he got to a point in the game, the construction yard, like wrecking ball part of the game, and he had no ammo, no grenades, no crafting, no nothing. And so we ended up having to like quit the game. And when I heard about that, it really just brought everything into perspective of holy hell. Like, I just have no idea. I'm so detached from what a normal human experience is like to play a game. And this is why, if you watch any of my reviews, if a game has a like difficulty options, I will never talk about the difficulty of the game because assuming that they are implemented well, of course. As long as the game gives the player the option to tailor their experience to their skill, I don't think it's important to talk about. And, I think there was probably a little bit of hubris, a little bit of ego in my buddy Jordan because he didn't start on easy mode. He wanted to play through on standard. But I think that's silly. First of all, just like as a little tangent here, I think it's silly. It is better for you as a person to experience the entirety of a game that you spend your hard-earned money on, whether that is easy, or super easy or whatever. It is better for you to get to play the entire game. I hate this idea of like, oh, this guy's not a real gamer, or we got to put this guy down because he played on easy mode or something like that. Listen, I like to play every single game that I play on the hardest difficulty. That's what's fun for me. Unless it's, Starfield, where it already takes 100 bullets to kill somebody. You can bet your ball sack I'm not going to turn that difficulty slider up because holy fuck, I'll be sitting there for 20 minutes spraying into one dude trying to kill him. But assuming that the difficulty, is well balanced, I'm always picking the hardest mode. But it's so dumb to try and dock on somebody for just playing the game that they bought how they want to. Like, he probably should have played on assisted for sure for Resident Evil 4, but it did do wonders of making me realize that I am just so detached from the average person's experience, and I don't know if we can judge a game's difficulty. Like, I genuinely do not know. I think there are games that are universally agreed upon that they are hard, right? I mean, you look at something like Contra. You look at something like the Souls series or Sekiro, Bloodborne, right? You look at these games that are seem like Battletoads back in the day, man. Holy fuck. Like, there are these games that are sort of universally agreed upon as being difficult. But how do we even come to that conclusion? Right? Is Dark Souls actually a hard game? If you can play it on, with sorcery and just one-shot everything? Yeah, I would say so. I would say it's still difficult. If the vast majority of builds find the game difficult, then yeah, I would say it's difficult. Is Contra still tough? Yeah, Contra's still tough. Dude, I don't care what you say. Contra is fucking sucks. Dude, there's a reason why we got the Contra code and everybody knows it because everybody needed it. But yeah, I think it is an interesting conversation. I'd love to hear your guys' opinions on it because I don't really know if we can evaluate a game's difficulty just because there's so much variation in the experience. And while I do think it's, once again, really disingenuous for Dunkey to present Armored Core 6 as being very easy simply because he used an overpowered build, I think it does do wonders for igniting a conversation about how do you discuss difficulty in a game, and can you at all? I don't really know. Personally, I don't know, and it's why I never do it in reviews. It's why I never talk about difficulty unless it is something with no difficulty scaling, like Armored Core. I did touch on it a bit in Armored Core. And there's huge difficulty spikes where like the game is just down here and then all of a sudden it's like way up here, which I think Armored Core does have a problem with, which I talked about it in the review. At least if you're, running a normal build. But yeah, I would love to hear your guys' take on it because for me, I personally do not think it's possible to talk about the difficulty of a game. I just don't think you can do it. I think you can talk about your experience, but at the end of the day, a dude playing Hollow Knight that only plays platformers or Celeste that only plays platformers is going to have a much better experience than me trying to play those games. And I know because I did play Celeste and I did play Hollow Knight, and holy hell, I got my ass smacked around in those games because I never played platformers. Whereas I could play survival horror and be doing challenge runs and shit on the hardest difficulty, and, the same dude that would own me in a platformer can't beat the game on standard mode. So I just don't really think you can talk about it, but I have to start work. So anyway, I'm going to cut it off here. Thanks for stopping by, everybody. Have a fantastic rest of your day. And thanks for listening to this rant. Bye-bye.